gentlemen, we are live on Facebook for our Sunday lunch stroke Sunday dinner. And what a guest we've got. We've been chatting for about 5 minutes already, and he's a character, I can tell you. I'm John McGilvray.
And my name's Liam Rudden, and yet we're joined by Powderhall legend Ivan Blacka tonight. As ever, Ivan will be answering your questions as well as ours. So all you need to do is pop onto the Facebook page, leave your message or leave your question, and either John or myself will read them out. John?
Yeah, thanks, Liam. It's great to be joined by the drill instructor from Full Metal Jacket. Ivan, it's a pleasure to have you here. How are you?
All right. Thanks you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you very much to the Edinburgh Monarchs and to the Speedway fans. And
we briefly mentioned, and we won't go into politics or anything like that, but we briefly mentioned how you were in Jacksonville. How is life for you over there just now with everything that's going on?
It's not too bad, actually. It's, we have a little bit of, we're supposed to have a lockdown, but most people really still go out and you can do your things. Just have a mask when you go into stores. And I go to work every day. It's 30 miles. I ride my Harley to work there and back. It's 60 miles round trip. And it's only a 3-person shop. I do transmission repair, so it's not really affecting me. I'm in my own room in the back. And it's a little hard because you can't go to the beach or anything like that. But hopefully this thing will be over soon. It's a bit of a pain in the neck because right now the parts are getting hard to get in the transmission business because a lot of them, I guess, are made in China and it's starting to dry up. So we'll see what happens anyway.
You sent me a picture of your Harley. Is that your pride and joy? It's some beautiful bike.
Yeah, that is my pride and joy. Yes, I didn't know anything about Harleys, and when I went down to Steve Luxon's place when we had the Mad Dogs and Englishmen tour, Steve Gresham, Scott Autry, Peter Prinsloo was there, me, myself, and there was a couple others too. Me and Steve Gresham, you know who Steve Gresham is, right? You've heard of Steve Gresham? He introduced me to Harleys at the Harley shop. He says, Dyna is the best Harley to buy. So after that, I went and looked at Dynas and I bought one.
Brilliant. Well, listen, you've been on the air for a couple of minutes and already we have a comment in for you from Christopher Black, who says, what a guy, always good for a comment on most things. Him tapping Steve Lawson on the shoulder was class. You remember that one?
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, we're obviously in the same team. It was a team riding thing, and we gated together, and I went around him on the outside, and he sort of took me a little wide, and I sort of had to turn real late, and when I came around, it was just so perfect. I just tapped him. I wanted to let him know that it was me that was alongside him, so we needed to team ride, keep the Scottish riders out.
So where are you? You're in Jacksonville just now, but that's not where it started for you. You were born in the UK.
Yeah, I was born in Southampton after the war. My father was a dispatch rider for the English Army. He used to deliver the mail, and he was stationed in Italy, and he met my mother. She was a poor farm girl, and I guess she could cook good. You know how the Italians are. They cook good, and they got married. And they went back to England, and I was born. And there was no work, so they immigrated off to Canada. And then we moved down. It was too cold in Canada, so we moved down to Philadelphia after that. But
and were motorbikes always in your life then, if your dad was?
Yeah, I have an older brother, a couple of years, and he always liked motorbikes, so I sort of rode his when I was growing up. And I had a couple mini bikes and stuff like that. Just for fun, though, nothing professional or anything like that.
I'm just going to say, how did it all start then with Speedway then? You're in Philly. I don't think
my father
was
from Bradford, and he used to go watch Vic Dugan. You remember Vic Dugan? Yeah. You think he was the leg trainer? He used to tell me all about it. They used to go before the war, and it was really popular back then. And he was a big Speedway fan. So he sort of got me involved in it. He says, let's buy a Speedway bike. So bought this bike in up New York State from some motorcycle shop. They had one, a Jawa 2-valve. And we just went to where we could. It was very hard to practice, though, because there was no tracks. I had to find like a field somewhere, but you know how rough it is. It was so rough, and I really never had any good experience to learn how to ride the bike until I went to California in 1975.
And so, how old were you when you first got into, if you like, racing?
I was about 19, just out of high school. 19 years old. We got the bike, and then we just went to different places. Like I said, you see a little spare ground field, we just get the bike out and try and do some slides on it. But it was so bumpy and it was hard. And we found this track out in Hanover. It was about a 3-hour drive. It was a quarter-mile track. He said you can use the track if you want. So I went out there. I did one start, went into the corner so fast that I didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't turn. And I hit the wall and I bent the bike up, and that was it. I did a half a lap, and away we went home.
Okay. But it obviously didn't put you off. How did you end up in the UK?
Well, I started in 75. I went, me and my father, we had a little trailer with our Jawa, and we rode to California. I started in California. I was in the 3rd division, worked my way up to the 2nd division. It was very popular. It had 5 tracks running in Southern California. And I worked my way up to 2nd division, and I got in the 2nd division championships when I finished 4th, which was pretty good. And I did one season. I had no funds. I ran out of money because you didn't make any money because you weren't any good. And I went back to Philadelphia, and then they had a couple tracks up in New York State, which I raced at, Batavia and Champion Speedway, which is still operating today. And I did 2 seasons up there, and then I said, well, it's decided that if I'm going to get any better, I need to go to England. That was it.
It's such a big life decision to do that and say, look, if I'm going to be better and be as good as I want to be, I need to go to England. I need to cross the Atlantic. Is it an easy decision to make, or was that single-mindedness?
Well, when you're young, you really take the opportunity to do things that, you don't even think about. You just do it. I arrived in England with a set of leathers, a couple hand tools, and that was it. I mean, it's ridiculous when you think about it. No equipment, nothing. I bought a bike from, who's the guy that was the Westlake guy? Norris, I believe. I forget. He was the guy that sold the Westlake engines. Anyway, I bought a bike from him. I bought a frame. And I did some second halves. I actually contacted a couple promoters over there. It was Vic White, was from Leicester. He said, well, come on over, we'll take a look. And I paid for my own airfare and all that. I got over there. He put me up in a supporter's house, and I did some laps in the second half at Leicester, but boy, I was crap. These second half guys were blowing me away. And I remember Scott Autry, Exeter was there against Leicester that night, and he walked up to the fence and he was checking me out. He said, he's rubbish. So, that was that. And then I just grew and grew and grew, after that. I just was so determined I was going to do it. And then Stoke took me on for some second halves, and they didn't think I had it. And then, obviously, Mike Parker, I think, saw that, I had some potential, and he grabbed me up, and then Edinburgh picked me up. And I'm very thankful to Edinburgh, because without them, I probably wouldn't have got the opportunity.
And am I right in thinking that you got the place in the Edinburgh team because Brian Collins was injured?
Yes,
and they needed to fill this place, and that got you your break with Edinburgh.
Yeah, that's what they said. Yeah, I was pretty crazy in the beginning. I rode over my head. I wasn't intentionally trying to do anything to anybody, but I just went in the corners way too fast without thinking. All throttle and no brains, if you understand. It was just enthusiasm. I was so excited. And you go in so fast you can't turn the bike. But from racing at the small tracks, I knew how to lock the bike up and turn. So I was good at turning the bike. So I learned pretty quick that way. I remember one time I took Tim Noonan out from Stoke when I was riding for Edinburgh. I went underneath him so fast I hooked up and hit him. We both went toward the fence, and I ruined his bike and everything. I felt so bad about it, but it wasn't intentional. It was just I didn't know what I was doing.
Well, Ivan, to back up what you're saying, I was reading a comment on the Speedway Star that said, what surprises me about Blacka, to be honest, is that he survived his settling in period with the Monarchs
Right.
killing himself. So
That's
would you
true.
say that was a fair comment?
That's a fair comment. Yes, I was pretty wild. I guess it was some excitement for the fans. They liked it, because they saw I was determined to score points, and I just went for it. All throttle and no brains. And then later I honed my skills as I practiced more and got more opportunity.
Well, one of those fans, Sandra Black, has said, it's lovely to see Ivan, and she loves your American accent.
Oh, tell her thank you. I wish I could hear her Scottish accent.
So who helped you settle in when you joined the Monarchs then? Was there anyone there that you thought was really good in helping you settle and allowing you to go and race?
It's kind of hard, really, when I think back. It was a tough decision. 78. I think I was stationed in Partington, where the Peter Collins and Dave Trouncin was there, Roger Lambert, and I met them. And I sort of was lodging at a few people's houses, and I went up there with them, and we shared rides, and I followed them up with my car and whatever. And then in '79, when Steve Lomas, you remember Steve Lomas from Boston? Yeah. He signed with the Monarchs. We had a house in Delft in Oldham near Manchester. We used to travel together for that season. So, but he didn't really like the track at Edinburgh, so he moved on after that season. But
was he not the one that wore the green leathers, which were considered very unlucky in that time?
They called him the Cucumber Boy. Yeah, green like a cucumber. Steve, yes.
How did you find the track at Powder Hall, Ivan?
I'm sorry?
Did the track at Powder Hall suit you once you got used to it?
It didn't really suit me at first, because I was sort of if you got to understand, the tracks in America are real small. So you sort of ride the inside line. It's called a pole rider. You go in hard and you lock it up and you around the inside. And Edinburgh, really, you needed to really be like a mid-track rider. So it was difficult for me in the early years because it had such long straights and tight turns that you really, you had to go in and lock it up, but you had to really be mid-track. And I was always trying to ride the inside, and it wasn't a really, if I knew what I knew now, I could probably do a lot better. But, you didn't have video back then and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't really have anybody helping me. I was sort of a loner. So I did okay for what I had.
It was a great... Go on, John.
I was just going to say, you've mentioned a few American names and people that came over. It's not something we get anymore, unfortunately, as the influx of American riders. You said there's tracks in New York. We know that obviously there's Speedway going in California. We had Max Rummel here, Brock Nichols with Wolverhampton. Why is it that we don't see the number of American riders anymore that we did back then?
I think it's because of the work permit thing and all that, with the averages and all that type of stuff. I think that affects a lot of riders. I got to say one thing about Edinburgh. I give Edinburgh credit. They do take a lot of American riders on. Look, they took on Aaron Fox, a few other riders. They really give the Americans an opportunity, and I'm grateful for that. They really give them the opportunity to come over and learn. But I think the work permits and that type of thing and the averages, I think that's a big problem.
So were you paying attention then when Aaron won us the league in 2014 and that memorable night with the last heat decider? Did you manage to catch up on what happened that night?
What was that again? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. When we won the league in 2014, he was part of that team, and what a night that was. Did you manage to catch up on what happened that night? Have you seen the scenes from that evening?
No, I haven't seen it because of being over here. It's hard to watch Speedway because you don't have a link. There's no, the links you get are they interrupt, they break up. It's difficult. So I really haven't watched much Speedway in England since I've been in America.
Well, when we're finished, Liam, I think it's your job is to send them the EMTV rewind from that night against Somerset, because you speak to any Edinburgh fan now, Ivan, and 99% of them will tell you for drama, that was by far their highlight. So, and Aaron played a part of that, and it'll be unforgettable.
Right, nice.
Ivan, you rode with some great riders in Edinburgh at Powder Hall. The names that I come to mind for me are Eric Broadbelt, Chris Turner, You had Benny Rourke, Neil Collins was just starting out, George Hunter was still riding, Dave Trounsend you've mentioned, Roger Lambert you've mentioned. What are your memories of riding with these guys? And I believe that Guy Robson too was a friend of yours.
Right, and you had also Brian Collins. I just realized that I didn't realize this when I was riding there. I just realized this maybe a few years ago. These riders had 10 years on me. Brian Collins, George Hunters, they were riding, Chris Turner, they were riding for like 10 years prior to when I arrived. I was just a new person. I never rode Speedway professionally, and these people were already racing for 10 years. It was amazing. I didn't realize that. They must have had a lot of skill behind that because of all the practice they've had over the years.
And did you learn from them, Ivan?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I just watched and learned. It was difficult because, like I say, there was no video to watch, and nobody really helped you that way. As far as everybody sort of was into their own scene, and it was difficult. You know, they didn't want to give anything away because they didn't want you to get better than them or whatever. So you were sort of on your own. I mean, my engines were never running right. I mean, I had the worst equipment going. If I'd have had a good equipment, I think I could have been a fairly strong heat leader in the British League. I really do, because I did have a few good meetings where, like I say, Cradley, I think it was 1980, I scored 8-9 with Wolverhampton. And I even beat Eric Gunderson in one heat. I won the heat. And also I beat Dave Jessup in 78, my first year in Britain at Coventry. He was guesting for Ole Olsen. It was me and Dave Morton on a 5-1 at Coventry. It was amazing. So I had the potential. It's just the equipment let me down. So, you know, that's my story.
And do you have good memories of Edinburgh itself and coming to Edinburgh? Did you get a chance to see the city? And I know you very quickly became a fan favourite when you arrived at Powderhall.
Yeah, I liked Edinburgh. The people, the supporters were great. The Scottish supporters, they were into their Speedway. They helped you out. They had a few sort of like donation meetings for me to help me out. I think they had a disco one time, a walk somewhere else. And also there was a Rolly Taylor. He was a prison guard. He used to put me up at his house, me and Steve Lomas. We used to go, he was a fan, and we used to stay there after the meeting. So they were very helpful. I got to thank the Scottish supporters in that for helping me as far as giving me room and board and stuff like that, helping me out that way.
You mentioned the race there when you beat Eric Gunderson. Is there any other memorable races that you can think of, whether it be good, bad, ugly? But what's your kind of top races that you remember?
Well, a couple of them. I remember one at Exeter that, you know, because Exeter is a big, fast track. I never liked it because I didn't have the equipment. I didn't have the fast motors. And I made the gate in one race, and I was coming around going into the third bend, and I was sort of like mid-track, and this rider came under me going 1,000,000 miles an hour. I tell you, I just like, woof! It was like, it just scared me so much that he just flew by me, like within about an inch of me. It was quite scary. I remember that vividly. That was something that really like scared me to death.
Were there any favourite tracks that you had when you came over? Were there places that you enjoyed going?
Yeah, I liked Oxford, Rye House. Peterborough was a great track. And we won the fours at Peterborough. Edinburgh did. Newcastle I liked too. It was just certain Berwick. I didn't realize I got third in a race there, a championship race at Berwick, which Berwick was that thick black clay. Like it was like not clay. It was like a granite or something. But it was a big track. But it's just some tracks take you and some don't.
And when you came to the UK, did you have any goals, Ivan, in the back of your mind, or did you really just come here to see what you could do, see what would happen? Because you could never do that these days, I don't think, in the sport.
No, I mean, like I said, I came with a set of leathers, a few tools, and you know, I didn't even have a motorcycle. I had to buy a bike. I always stayed at supporters' houses. They used to, you know, put me up and stuff, and I'd work on my bike in their garage or whatever. And I really didn't have any goals. I just wanted to do Speedway and just try and. I would have done it for free. I didn't care about the money. I just loved doing it. It was exciting, you know.
Well, what is it that makes you passionate then? What is the hook that drags you in that makes you need to do it?
It's just the thrill of just, it's the excitement of just, going to the race and just thinking that you're going to be in this race and going up to the line with three other riders, and it's just the adrenaline rush of just getting that bike and, taking it off. It's just, pulling a wheelie or whatever when you start out at the start line to get to the first bend and you got four other. It's hard to explain, but it's just a thrill. It's got to be in you to do it. You can't be scared of it. You got to be able to give it 100%. Like some riders, you can see when they go into the bend, they back off because they're scared. But you can't be scared. You just got to go in 100%. Be committed, in other words. You have to be committed.
Yeah. Ride the bike so the bike doesn't ride you, sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. I remember one time I was at Hackney with Wolverhampton, and I was reserve. And my brother had built me this magic box for the bike, the ignition system, and the bike was running really good that night. And I went out my first race, and the team manager, I think it was Chris Harrison, was at the time, was a team manager. He came back and he says, "You're only 0.2 of a second off the track record." That was something. And believe it or not, that night, I think Finn Thompson was even there racing. That night, the only other person that beat my time was Steve Bastable, who was, I think he was guesting for Wolverhampton at the time. So the bike was really running good. I had a really fast time. And the bike just after that just deteriorated. It didn't start. The ignition system broke down. It never ran like that. I really believe if I had a good equipment, I could have done better because I had the races to prove it. It wasn't just a fluke. Like I said, the bike just was going like a rocket ship, and I was just hanging on, and away it went. So that was quite an achievement to do.
You raced around the world, Ivan, and I found a brilliant picture of you with Bruce Pennell and Bobby Schwartz. The three Americans all lined up.
Yeah, that was 1979. At the end of the season, was at the end of the '78 season. I can't remember. Anyway, it was 1979. A guy came up to me. That guy I stayed with, Rolly, and he says, "They want you to go to Australia. Do you want to go? You got to make a decision now." I says, "All right, I'll go." So I put a helmet. I got a helmet, my Monarchs helmet bag, and I put a motor in there, the Westlake motor. And I just went to Sydney and arrived at Sydney. And the promoter arranged for us to be picked up at the airport. I think it was me, it was Bruce Penhall, but they flew on different flights, but they were all sort of at the same time. Bruce Penhall and Bobby Schwartz, they put them up in this nice villa somewhere. But me, because I was a nobody, I actually went to Nigel Bucock's house and I stayed there. And he rented me a frame. So I put my motor in his frame, and then we went down to Sydney. And that was a fixture at the showgrounds with Bruce and Bobby at the showground. That was sort of the year of Bruce. It was one of his first years in Britain, and when he was in Australia for that time, and he was sort of he didn't really hone his skills till later on.
Ivan, sorry to interrupt there. My dad used to always go on. The one track in the world that he always wanted to visit, and unfortunately never did, was the Sydney Showground.
Right.
What was it like to race there? Because I've had my dad tell me
it was
the place he went, and I'd love to hear what it was like to ride there.
Yeah. Sydney Showgrounds was a huge track. It was sort of like a quarter-mile track, if you can imagine how big. It was big. It was sort of like the old Bellevue. Remember how big Bellevue was? And it had steel. It had concrete walls. They were solid concrete. So it was kind of, from England coming to Australia trying to race around there, it was kind of scary. I realized that I couldn't fall off. You had to stay on the bike because you didn't want to hit the wall. But it was quite frightening because of the walls. You don't want to fall. So I said, no, I can't fall. And I never fell, which was a good thing. So, and I also stayed with Denny Pyatt, stayed with me, the late Denny Pyatt, rest in peace. He got killed at Hackney. He stayed with me at Nigel Bucock's house. And we went down to Mildura. And I bought an old Holden car, a Holden, I think it was $500. And we borrowed a trailer from Nigel. And me and Denny traveled down to Mildura. And we were following John Tittman. Do you remember John Tittman? John Tittman, he rode for Leicester. Anyway, we were in the car behind them. And there was a red fox dead on the side of the road. And John Tittman pulls over and he gets his snippers out of the car, out of the toolbox. He goes over and he snips the tail off of it because it was dead. And he says, this will make for a good souvenir. It was a beautiful red fox tail. So we continued to Mildura, which was Phil Crump's home track. And Bruce Penhall goes out in the first race, never practiced, and he breaks the track record. Can you believe it? and it was so deep. It was probably about 6 inches deep. They put a lot of dirt on it because they thought it would throw the riders off, being Phil Crump's home track. But Bruce Penhall went round. He comes back into the pits. He says, "Watch it, guys. There's a little grippy." And a little grippy. When I went out my race, I could barely hang on to the bike. The bike was just pulling. But I was really amazed to see him break the track record in the first race. And Phil Crump was not happy at all about that.
Would he have been one of the best riders that you've raced with then, Bruce Penhall? And who were the other guys that were just a different class?
As far as what, riding with them, you mean?
Yeah, riding with them, or their ability on a bike.
Well, George was George Hunter, rest in peace, him too. George was the kind of guy that he wasn't a selfish rider. He'd like to team ride, and he wouldn't worry about winning as long as he could pull his teammate along. But some riders, I'm not going to say names, but they're very selfish. They just want to win, and they don't care about her.
We want names on this, Ivan. We want names.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I don't want to get in trouble. You have to understand, some riders are not selfish, and some are. As far as team, it's a team sport, so you should really team ride. But a lot of riders just want to win, and they don't care about team riding. But
going back, briefly to when you said you started out, you came over with some with leathers and a helmet.
Right.
I read the same interview, when they said that you were lucky to still be alive after your opening meetings.
Right.
But you mentioned that, to think to do that now for a rider to just turn up with nothing, I don't want to say pampered, because next time I go to the pit stand I'll get filled in. But, do you think there's so much more advantage for young riders nowadays in terms of the equipment and how it's almost kind of to laid on for them a bit?
Yeah, it's impossible. You couldn't do what I did today.
Yeah.
You'd probably need 20,000 pounds to even get started. You can't do it. I mean, the equipment is so expensive. It's the cars they have. I had a little it was an escort van, one of the little escort. I forget what they call it, a little escort van. It was a blue thing. It was like a little plumber's van or whatever. I bought it for 200 pounds or something, and I just put the bike in the back of that, and I didn't care about it. I just wanted to ride Speedway and whatever thing. But today you couldn't roll up with a set of leathers and no tools and expect to compete. It's impossible. You just couldn't do it. So that's what was good about Speedway back then. You could compete and get into the sport with a fairly low, financial amount. Where today, this is what's killing the sport: is young riders cannot get started due to the fact is it's so damn expensive.
Yeah, it's funds, isn't it? And what would you say? Do you still follow Speedway now? Do you still get to watch the Grand Prix and things like that?
I do, yes. I do watch some of the Grand Prix, and I do get a lot of stick from it because I actually like watching Nicky Pedersen, and nobody likes him, but only because he's exciting to watch. I mean, as far as like Greg Hancock goes, okay, Greg Hancock's a legend. I mean, he's a great rider. To do what he's done is amazing. I can't put the guy down, but to me, he's a boring rider. He either makes the gate or he doesn't make the gate, and I don't really see a lot happening for him. He's not very exciting to watch. Where like Nicky, you don't know what he's going to do next. So that's the reason I like it. It's exciting to watch, if you can understand. Sort of like the Sean Moran boys. Remember them? The Moran boys, the Sean and Kelly.
Yeah.
They were wild too. But
What do you see is the big differences then between the sport now and the sport when you rode? What are the kind of main differences, would you say?
I would say probably the equipment, the engines, the laydowns. They're spinning so damn fast. The RPMs are the tracks. If they have any kind of dirts or ruts in them, the bikes are like wild Broncos. I mean, they hit a rut and they just take off because the wheel just stops spinning. It's spinning so fast. It's got no torque to pull through it. So it hits it. It just takes off. It just throws the rider off. So you really don't have. On the old Westlakes and the other ones, the uprights, you could hit a rut and the engine would you'd have the power to pull through it, like screw the throttle on it, it would pull out of it. But the laydowns, they spin so fast that it just stops the wheel spinning and it just launches you like a rocket ship. So I think the bikes, I think if they went back to the uprights, I think it would be a lot more interesting, and it would be affordable to the sport too, as far as getting into the sport. You know, you wouldn't need a lot of money.
And would you like to?
That will never happen.
Would you like to ride now, or would you rather that you rode when you rode?
No, I'd rather ride back then because I think it was easier. Not easier to ride, but it was more. You had more throttle control and stuff. Now I hear they just screw them on full throttle from the start. They just keep it pinned. They don't even. They might like blurp it once in a while, but they don't back off the throttle like in the old days. There was a lot more throttle control. That's why Ivan Major always said you ride like this with your thumb on the side so you can work the throttle. You know, today it's just all on. If you watch it, you'll see what I mean.
Yeah, back in the day when you were riding as well, Ivan, there was so many more tracks as well.
Yeah, I think there was probably 22 National League tracks, maybe more, I don't know, and about 20 British League tracks. And there was so many good riders. I mean, all these riders like Joe Owen, Tom Owen, Les Rumsey. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. They were in the National League. They were at the top. And they weren't even good enough to stay in the British League and make money because that's how good the league was. The British League was phenomenal. I mean, the riders, every team had, they had what, 7 top riders, and it was amazing. It really was. It was like the Halifax with Kenny Carter, the way he used to fly around there. I mean, he was amazing around there, that kid. I know everybody has bad things to say on the thing. That's all. I'm talking about his Speedway ride. No, he was amazing as a Speedway rider. He really was.
Do you miss the thrill of racing?
I do, yeah. I went up to New York and had to go on one of the old Jawas, but it was raining and it was wet, the track, and it was so slippery, and it was the worst time to do it. I went in the corner and the bike just swoo. Well, I almost, like, it's locked up on me. I almost lost it, but I managed to stay on. But I would like to have it going. In your mind, you feel like you can do it, but I don't think your body is going to be strong enough to do it, if you know what I mean. You still feel 20 mentally, don't you?
Yeah.
Yep.
Still in your head, you're still
But the
20.
body's 70.
And then the body lets you down. Yeah.
Right.
I've got a message here from David Smith who says, "The man is a saint." This is you. The man is a saint. Ivan Blacka, when can I come to Florida?
Is that the David Smith that was Roger Lambert?
I will assume so, but hopefully he'll come back and tell us if it's the same one. And also we've got Gary O'Hare says, "Hello, Ivan."
Yeah, hello, Gary. Yeah, Gary's a legend too. Look at him; he's still riding at his age, and he's still going strong. Actually, he came over to New York, did a one of the meetings over there, and he was still going really well. But he had a broken chain, I think, and some engine problems that he could have probably have won it if he would have, wouldn't have that problem.
Well, we've also got Ron King, the photographer, saying he well remembers your wee spat with Cribby at Monmore in '79.
Right. Yeah, I remember. I don't know what that was about, but all I know is we were racing around and we sort of had like a tussle with each other. And at the end of the race, Cribby came up to me and sort of like, said something to me and sort of like pushed me. And next thing I know, he had me on the ground. He's a big guy, Cribby. You don't want to mess with him. But I didn't know really what I did wrong. All I know, I think it was just playing up to the fans.
Yeah.
With me riding for Wolverhampton before as well. So I think it was sort of like he was just making it exciting for the fans. There
was lots of characters back then, and you got away with that more so than you would ever get away with it now. I mean, now if you look, you should probably get fined.
Right. People back then would, like somebody would come under your heart and push you out into the fence or whatever. It was no big deal. Everybody makes a big deal out of it today. I mean, you just got on with it back then, and you didn't hold any grudges or anything. It was part of racing, and you just did it, and that's it. You just forgot about it after the race, Or a lot of people today they make a big thing out of, oh, he's a dirty rider and all this, that. There was lots of people that would go in hard and take people out back then. I mean, it happened all the time. But it was just part of the job.
We've said that to a few of the guys that we've interviewed, Ivan. That I certainly feel that part of the sport lacks now. You spoke about Nicky Pedersen, and you know, Sam Masters and him having a wee set to at the Australian Grand Prix. You know, we talk about that because it never really happens anymore. And when it does happen, it's such a big thing. Do you think there's a lot of the characters in the sport that are missing? You know, you had so many, you've mentioned so many names that were all characters. Is that something that's missing nowadays?
I think it is, yeah. I mean, look at the infamous race with Bruce Penhall and Kenny Carter in Los Angeles. Yeah. I mean, that race is still being talked about today. It was a fantastic race, that when they're bumping they're coming out of the corner and they're bumping shoulders and stuff like that. I mean, that was I love that race. Don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. I mean, that's what made Speedway great back then.
When you were at Powderhall, Ivan, and you first arrived in Scotland, how long, I mean, it took you time to settle down on the track, but how long did it take you to settle down in the UK? Did you feel at home here? Obviously, you were born here, but that had been a very long time ago. You'd never really lived here. Did you find the UK, did it feel like a second home when you arrived?
You know, when you're young, like I say, you don't have any fears. So I was sort of stationed in Manchester. I used to leave about 2 o'clock on a Friday, drive to, up I forget what it is, the M6 or whatever it was, go up. I used to get off at Moffat, if you know Moffat, and I used to take the back road into Edinburgh. And I used to use that like a race course to get ready for the meeting because it was really windy. It was beautiful, the hills and all that. And I'd take that road up to Edinburgh, and then I could see the castle as you come into Edinburgh, that beautiful castle sitting up there on a hill. And it was 220 miles there. It took you about 3.5 hours, and you would race, and sometimes you'd have to drive straight back, another 220 to get home, because you'd have a meeting down south somewhere the next day or in the Midlands somewhere. But I usually settled in the Midlands. I probably should have settled with riding for Edinburgh up north more, but I found the Midlands to be more of a central location as far as Speedway goes, so you could get to different tracks pretty easy.
And where did you go after you left Edinburgh, Ivan?
I did a season at Nottingham, 1980. I did really well for them. I don't know why I went to them. There was some kind of something where, I don't know, something happened where with signing on or something, but Nottingham picked me up, and I did really well for them. I did about 12 meetings for them, and I remember my first race when I went to Nottingham. That was a big track. It was me and Mike Sampson. I don't know if you ever remember Mike Sampson that rode for Nottingham, and I outgated him because we were teammates, and I was going around the thing, and he tried to fence me. I tried to team ride with him. I slowed down, so I was on the outside. He came under me, he tried to push me into the fence. And after that, I just thought, man, this guy's a jerk, So I thought, screw him. But I had some really good meetings for Nottingham, and I went to Boston, and I came out of the fourth bend, and I broke my collarbone. The bike started going into a wobble. I hooked up, and it threw me off. I just missed the starting pace, and I broke my collarbone, and that was it. That was done for the season. So, but I did 12 meetings for them, and they were real excited. I had a good average for them. And then after that I went back to Edinburgh again. I did 4 seasons, 5 seasons in England. I did 4 in Edinburgh and 1 at Nottingham. Edinburgh and Wolverhampton, I split between them.
Yeah.
But I did 5 seasons. That's all I did. 78 to 82, and I just had enough of it in 82. It was getting to the point where I wasn't making any money or anything, so I just said, hell with this. I just left, went home.
Did you ever regret going home? Did you ever regret giving up?
No, I regretted not taking my equipment with me. I sold it off. I should have took my bike with me because I could have continued to race up in New York State, which was about a couple 100 miles from me. On Saturday nights, they raced up there. I should have took it and could have made some pocket money up there on the weekends, But I just was so frustrated with it. It was just a lot of political things going on in the sport, and it just didn't work out for me, so I just decided to quit.
Okay, well, Sandra Black has remembered, Ivan, that you stopped in Moffat and you bought a tartan travel rug and had it in the back window of your car.
Yes, I did, yes. Yeah, they make the best rugs in Moffat. They all hand woven and stuff. I actually bought 2 from my mom too and sent them to her. She was in Italy, She wanted something warm, so I bought her 2 nice wool tartan blankets that were hand sewn. They were beautiful, and I sent them to her in Italy. And she used to use them when she sit on the couch to keep warm in the wintertime.
Brilliant.
Very well made. They make the best wool blankets in Moffat.
We were part of the Moffat Gala Day as a Falkirk supporters bus, but that's another story. You've went back then to America when you've quit the sport. What did you do then?
Well, I decided I had to have a career. I didn't really have kind of a backing or anything technical like school or anything. So my dad says, "What are you going to do? What do you want to do?" He says, "I think you should get into transmissions. It's a thing where it's sort of like you're one part of the car you're working on. You're specialized in one type of thing." So I went to transmission school for 6 months, which was a joke, really. But because you really don't learn anything on the books, you got to have hands-on. And I got a little diploma there, and I just got a job in the transmission business. And I started taking them out, putting them in, and then eventually I got a chance to go on the bench, rebuild them. And I started rebuilding them, and I just got really good at it. I could do them all: BMW, Mercedes, all the cars. And I just been doing that. I'm still doing that today. So even I went back to England, and I think it was it like 2000 or 98 or something, somewhere around there, 2000. I went back for 5 years, and I got a job in Chester Automatic Transmissions. I used to do all their limousines for them. They used to have these big stretch limos, the Fords.
Yeah.
Ford stretch limos, town cars and all them. And I used to do all the transmissions for them there. So it's a good trade because you can get a job anywhere around the world. And I'm still doing it today, and I get paid very well for doing it, and I'm happy. And, I'm glad that I did learn a craft, because otherwise, you'd be working for minimum wage somewhere.
Well, I run a car dealership, Ivan, and I know what you boys charge for these sort of things. So you're right to say that you make a few quid there.
I'm sorry?
I said I run a car dealership, and I know how much you boys charge for these things. So you're right to say that you make a few bob.
Yeah, I do very well. He pays me well. It's a small shop, 3 men. The guy takes them out. I rebuild them, put them back in. And he's got his Better Business Bureau. You know what that is, the Better Business Bureau? It's like a rating they rate you over here. He's got it up to an A-. He wasn't a D at one time because the mechanics he had in there weren't very good. They'd have a lot of comebacks. Cars would come back all the time. But we got our comeback ratio down to 2%, which is pretty good. So that's 2 out of 100 to come back, which isn't bad.
Ivan, what advice would you give to any youngsters going into the sport today? I know it's a very different sport, but at the end of the day, it's a guy getting on a bike, and then it's what you do once you're on that bike. So what would be your advice to youngsters starting today? What would you tell them?
I would say to them, try and, get a video, watch your videos, what you're doing. Try and get somebody that knows what they're doing to try and help you, because if somebody would have helped me, I could have really honed my skills in. I think you need to have somebody that really knows what they're doing to sort of lead you the right way, because you can get into bad habits and stuff, and sort of takes you the wrong way. Instead of progressing, you go the other way. That would be my thing. And do a lot of practice a lot, and strength too. Keep your body fit. You got to do a lot of training on your body, because it's a very strenuous sport. Speedway is. You got to hang on to that bike.
That's something that's
important.
Yeah, it's something that's changed over the last while. We spoke to Rory Schlein a few weeks ago, and he spoke about when Ty Woffenden kind of made that step up and got himself super fit. I know Nicky Pedersen, he got himself very fit as well. Is that something that, do you look back and think that maybe your career you could have been worked on more than that, or were you kind of one of these naturally fit guys?
No, I actually did work out all the time. When I lived in Manchester and Oldham, I used to go to the Y 3 times a week, and I used to do running first. I'd run for a couple of miles, and then I'd work out. This guy was a wrestler. He used to teach me how to wrestle and stuff. Wrestling is very strenuous. And I used to do that 3 times a week. And I try and do push-ups and sit-ups and all that kind of stuff. I was big on fitness. I was always, because I used to do gymnastics when I was in high school. So, I have a couple of pictures of me on the rings, you know, the rings, and doing some handstands and stuff. But no, fitness is very important. So I always kept myself fit.
And I imagine that upper body strength would have come in handy for handling the bike.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It's just 4 laps, but God, it pulls your arms out of the sockets, you know, because it's constantly pulling. And you got to have strong arms in here, and body, upper strength. So you really need to physical. Anybody that doesn't work out is crazy. I think you got to be super fit to handle the bike.
Ivan, David Robertson asks, what change would you like to see with today's Speedway to improve the sport?
As I said before, I'd like to see the expense of it, so new riders can get into it. No new riders can get into it, new kids, because of how much it costs. I'd like to see them downgrade the machinery somehow. It's never going to happen, but that's what I think would be. Go back to an upright engine that's sort of cheap and reliable and lasts maybe, you know, half a season before you have to rebuild it, and that type of thing, and make it economical for the riders to get into, because it's like, you want to be a Formula One rider. You couldn't afford to be a Formula One rider, a racer, because you didn't have the funds to get into the sport. It's impossible. You see what I'm saying? It's got to the point where it's so expensive. No new blood can get into it. They just can't afford it unless they got rich parents. So that's my opinion.
Ivan, what would be your dream 1 to 7 then? Who would be the 7 guys that you've ridden with in your time that you would say would be your all-time 1 to 7 team?
That's tough. I don't know. Like I say, it was so. When I think about the National League and the British League, I mean, it's just, all these names just pop up. There's so many of them. You'd really have to sit down for a week and look it over and decide. It's a tough one.
Well, let me put it another way then. You're going to the tapes. It's a big race. You've got one guy that you've raced with that you want to be by your side. Who would be the one guy that you would want to race with that you know you're going to get a 5-1?
Oh, I don't know. That's a tough. When I raced with Edinburgh, I'd probably want George Hunter, because he was, like I say, he was very. He was a sharing type guy. He was for the team, and he was a team guy all the way. I give George a credit for that. You know, rest in peace, George.
Do you keep in touch with any of the guys that you raced with?
No, not really. Only one, Guy Robson. I keep in touch with him. He wrote some reserves for Edinburgh, a few meetings, and he's a good friend. He lives in Manchester. He still rides bikes, but on the street, you know. But that's about it, really. I don't have many. You know, it's being over here, it's hard to keep in touch with people.
Yeah. Do you have any, bearing that in mind, are there any messages you'd like to send out to the fans from back in the day who are watching this now?
Well, I'd like to say, thank you to Mike Hunter for all he did. He was a big Speedway, you know, supporter back then. I know he was involved in the promotion and all that. He helped out a lot.
He still is, Ivan. He still is.
Yep.
Yeah, he let me stay at his house. I used to have a mattress upstairs. I bought a mattress to stay at his house, and I understand it's still there today. It's up in the attic. Like 40-year-old mattress still up in the attic.
In case you ever come back, Ivan.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I'd like to thank Rolly Taylor. I'd love to see if I could find him, but it's just he's gone away. I mean, I stayed at his place for a whole season. He was very nice. He was a prison guard at the other end of Edinburgh. There was a prison down there. I forget. Started with an S. I can't remember. Yeah. Was it Salton?
Salton.
Yeah, he worked there as a prison guard, and he just lived in council home, just right. It was walking distance to the prison. We used to stay at his house. I'd like to thank him, and there's probably lots of people. I apologize that I can't remember, you know, but like I say, the fan base up there was very good. They were into their riders, and they helped them, you know, the best they could. And also Ron King, he took some good photographs.
Yeah. I'm pleased to say that the fans are still as passionate and still as helpful to the riders as they were back then, Ivan. The Monarchs 100 especially are doing some incredible work in helping keep the club going. So the good news is the fans are as passionate and as helpful and as right behind the riders as they always have been.
Yeah, it's a shame that the Powderhall Stadium still wasn't there, though. That stadium was beautiful. I mean, that's sad to see
You
that.
could see Armadale. Oh, beautiful.
Right. Yeah, I've been in Armadale once, but as far as Powderhall goes, Powderhall was probably better than most British League tracks in the day. There was probably only a couple that were better. It was a beautiful stadium.
Well, if you ever get back to Armadale, Ivan, you've got to come up and see John and I in the tower, in our little tower, and we'll do a live interview with you then as well.
Yeah, I will. I'd like to make a trip back to England one time. I really would. I just it's finding the time, but with this COVID thing, you can't travel. I was supposed to go to Italy last year in May to May just passed this year to visit my mom's grave because she's buried over there, and I had to cancel my trip. Luckily, I got my money back. My mother has a house there still that we still own, me and my brother, and we need to sell it, but we can't get over there to do it because of the COVID thing.
Well, when everything gets back to a normality, you'll always be welcome in Scotland. We'd love to see you back.
Right. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Ivan, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us. It's great to see you. Great to see you looking well. And, it's been brilliant. Thank you for joining us.
I appreciate it. Thank you, John and Liam. And like I say, get some other riders on here, and hopefully you'll keep this going along. I looked at some of the interviews. I watched a couple of them. They're very interesting, and it's a good thing. Whose idea was this? Whose idea?
It wasn't mine, I'll be honest.
I think the promotion had the idea that we could do this, didn't they? And then we sort of it was to fill in because there's no Speedway, Ivan. We needed something to.
Right,
Phil.
Did you know what Carl Fiala does? Where Are They Now? Do you know Where Are They Now? That was my idea. I gave it over to him though. I thought the celebrities when you wonder where they are now, like these big stars.
Yeah.
That was Where Are They Now? Speed ride. Carl Fiala has done a brilliant job with that. Speedway Friends. He's Where Are They Now?
Oh, yeah.
And that was my idea, and I handed it over to him because I couldn't have done it like him, and he's doing a great job with that. And I hope there's a lot more riders that can participate in that because everybody loves to read about, ex-riders, what they're doing today and all that. So
I think the good thing for this, Ivan, we spoke to the Monarchs 1 to 7 from this year, with the idea being that we would introduce them to the fans, and then if we could get some Speedway, they would know that. But the good thing about it is humanising them. They're seeing these riders for who they are. They're good people. They're honest guys, and they just want to go and do a job and race their bikes. I think it's been a really good thing for the fans to see these guys and to hear them and what they have to say.
Right. Yeah, it is a good thing. That's good. And keep it going, Try and get some more on here.
We'll do that. Definitely.
Thank you, Ivan. That's us for this week. We'll be back with another Sunday lunch, and from myself and Liam. Thank you very much, Ivan.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. I was a little nervous. I must admit, I'm not a natural actor, but you have to do this every day to get used to it, It's like a job.
You were brilliant, mate. You were brilliant.
Thank you. And thanks for having me, and we'll see you again sometime.
Hopefully. Thank you, Ivan.